Hi, ladies. So today, let's talk about something that is really, really important in relationships, and that it is so common amongst women. So, this is about people-pleasing tendencies in relationships. And also, I want to talk about this topic because I just launched my masterclass, the People Pleaser Rehab, where I dive really, really deep into what I learned about this pattern and, what really actually triggers this pattern and triggers people's taker mode so that they subconsciously, they don't even realize it, they become takers in the relationship while you are the one often overgiving in the relationship and being taken for granted. So, this is actually a very, very common pattern amongst women because many women, there are many that grew up being taught that they have to overgive, that they have to, take care of others, take care of their siblings, friends, be nice, etc., etc. So, women are also often more focused on connections, so they subtly pay more attention to the subtleties of a connection. So that's why they try to harmonize often the relationships, and this is often by overgiving, overextending themselves, which, well, in the short term, while it helps you to harmonize relationships, in the long term, it's actually not sustainable. Because first, you would be really resenting it in the long run because you would feel that, okay, I am giving, 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 but then it doesn't really feel that it's reciprocal. And then on the other side, the person might actually subconsciously start to take things for granted because, they are not really bad people. Like they don't really have bad intention often. But what happens is this is a human nature pattern. Is that if they often receive something from others and they might or might not reciprocate, but especially if they don't really reciprocate, but the other person just gives, gives, and gives, then by time they actually normalize this and they start to take it for granted. So that at the end of the day, their brain just feels that, oh, this might be normal that Monica is giving, giving, giving. Maybe it's their nature, maybe like it's their way of doing this relationship. But then actually, in the subconscious level, because when you overgive, you are actually lowering yourself already and putting the other person on pedestal. And you might not even realize it, okay? Because sometimes we do these kind of things in very subtle ways. For example, have you noticed that when you talk with others, maybe you are over apologetic? So, for example, you might often, want to talk about something with someone, maybe in a romantic relationship, maybe in friendship, family, co-workers, like at work. You might approach people with this, oh, I'm sorry to bother you today, right now. I'm not sure if this is the right moment, but I won't be taking a lot of your time. I just want to talk about talk about something with you. And just by these ways of talking that you don't even realize, because you might feel that, okay, you're just being polite, you're just being nice. But when you are approaching people during interactions with these kind of tones of conversation, you are already subconsciously putting yourself in a lower level and putting people on pedestal, really. And because humans, they are mirroring animals, they are complementing you energetically, then they naturally and subconsciously put themselves here, so that because you are here already. And what happens is that if you are often sending these subtle signals through the way you carry yourself, through the way you are talking, etc., etc., then people will gradually take you for granted and gradually, feel that, okay, this is normal, etc., etc. And I can give you an example. Like some years ago, when I was talking with a coworker and he was doing some voluntary work at an association that distributes food. So what happened was that initially, when he was helping to distribute food for to needing families, these families at the beginning they would be really grateful because they are really receiving the help that they need. So they would be, oh, thank you so much for this food. Yeah, it really helped our families, etc., etc. However, by time, they noticed that some of these families are starting to take things a little bit for granted to the point that when they received a little bit less food or food qualities that are, not a specific brand or etc., these families would start to comment like, oh, there is less food today, what happened? But, in the way that, these foods are actually not as good quality, what happened to the quality? So they were starting to take things a little bit for granted. And of course, this is not a good sign. But this is what actually happens so commonly with human nature, is that when they receive certain benefits, by time, their brain will start to take it for granted. And then when people suddenly are not giving as much benefits, or they suddenly, put a stop in certain things, for example, if you are over giving, you might gradually resent it. And when you learn to have healthy boundaries and put a stop in certain things that you are over giving, what happens is that people will start to, oh, what happened, Monica? Why are you stopped doing this and this? Do you not care for my needs anymore? And well, some people, they might be more outward in their expression of this, but some people, they might be more inward and they start to resent or wonder what is wrong with the dynamic when you are actually finally just putting in healthy boundaries. So this dynamic, of course, often doesn't end well because by the time the people pleaser snaps, sometimes they do it in a healthy manner. Like, hey, actually, I don't feel comfortable like doing this, and I don't feel that my needs are met or heard in a relationship. Or sometimes many people pleasers, what happens is that they just snap, and the way they snap might be really abrupt and intense. So that they suddenly, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, or now this is what I'm doing, etc., etc. And of course, then the other person who also normalized the pattern, if they are unaware that they are actually becoming more and more selfish, they might also not know what is really going on, like what's happened. And then they also just, okay, you are actually betraying our friendship, betraying our relationship. Why are you actually not caring anymore? All these things that wouldn't go well. So what happens is very important is that we need to become more and more aware that if you're a people pleaser, becoming more aware, like where am I putting myself in a lower position? Like if I am being too apologetic when I am interacting with others, I am too afraid to express what I need, what I desire. So I only let the other person do that and meet the other person's need while I am not really taking some space in the relationship as well, so that I can also let the other person know about my needs and desires so that they can also meet it. And where is it that I am like really over giving so much, like always accommodating, like always be there for the other person, but then when the other person is not really reciprocating, like for example, when you finally say that, hey, it would mean a lot to me if you can do this and etc., and they still not showing the proper care or consideration, then where am I actually not putting in the healthy boundaries to, put a stop in that because it's not reciprocal anymore? so that the other person can also understand that, oh, okay, actually, I am not really considering the other person's need. So maybe I should, do more of that if I really care about this person. So it is about, you see, where am I really overgiving, overpleasing, putting myself lower? And then where am I also not communicating my boundaries? Because what also happens is that people pleasers, why they people please is because they want to secure the relationship. They want to keep the harmony of the relationship so that they can keep the relationship going. However, this comes from the fear of sabotaging a relationship, of a relationship not working, so that you are really pleasing, appeasing the other person so that you can keep the relationship going. So what happens is that you internally might feel so afraid of asserting your needs that you kind of hope that the other person guess about what you need and desire and have the common sense of being considerate of your needs and desires as a person. So you don't really communicate it. And the story of your mind is that, oh, the other person should have this common sense about being considerate, being caring, etc., etc. And then you actually resent the situation more and more and more. So you become more and more bitter. And then at the end of the day, you either snap or you continue with this borderline passive aggressive tendency. Like maybe you become more critical in a relationship, maybe you become less considerate, maybe you give in some subtle comments that actually are not so nice at all anymore. And then the other person, instead of understanding what is going on, they might actually perceive, okay, this person is really not being nice at all, so I don't like this person anymore. So then the relationship, in one way or another, will be sabotaged by these tendencies, okay? So when you learn to put in the healthy boundaries right at the beginning, and it's important that you, right at the beginning, position yourself as an equal, then you are more able to have a sustainable relationship where the other person will be reciprocal in the relationship. And if they don't, you have the healthy boundaries and you would walk away from the relationship that the other person is not able or doesn't want to, give at the same level that you are giving, so that they cannot meet you at the same level of reciprocity. So then you can really pull yourself away and align yourself with the people who can really meet you where you are at. And this is very important because then you really avoid either having a relationship that will eventually crumble or that you will really be resentful in this relationship and really don't have your needs and desires met, okay? So if you want to know more about it, because I dove really deeper, much deeper, about how you don't trigger the predator mode, the inner taker mode of people, and how to, maintain an equal footing in a relationship, or if you're already in certain relationship dynamic, friendship, workplace, family, or romantic, how you can actually gradually turn things around, you can check out my masterclass, the People Pleaser Rehab, where I dive really, really deeply. Because, I had to learn a lot of these lessons and really understand what is the dynamics in the human nature behind this dynamic. And I really learned a lot, because I realized that I thought that I was already, putting myself as equal often. But while I got this actually pretty covered in the romantic relationships, in the other kinds of relationships, like friendships especially, I didn't really realize it until I really encountered situations where I learned my lessons, and well, I shared this deeper in the masterclass. So in this masterclass, I really dig deep into this dynamic and help you understand. And also, how can you avoid also taking the people for granted or being taken for granted, so that you can really have better, more sustainable relationships? Because all these patterns, we learn them even since childhood. Like all these patterns, we sometimes learn them, and it is so hard to be fully aware often of what is really going on, that when we finally notice something, usually it's when we notice that, oh, the other person might be taking me for granted, like my needs are actually not being considered in this relationship. And then by that time, it might be a little bit harder to turn things around, but it is still possible. It just needs to be the first step to be really aware of this dynamic and what is really happening. Because another very important thing to highlight is that people are not inherently bad. It's just they learn all these dynamics. But like somehow we get ourselves in these dynamics without we even knowing about it. So yeah, check this masterclass out because it is really freshly launched today. And I hope that it will be helpful for you to, have healthier relationships, more reciprocal, equal relationships.